Please welcome Nathalie. Nathalie is a senior UX designer at DICE, game design studio based in Sweden. Nathalie, morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good to see you.
Something exciting. Well, likewise. Hey, folks, when Nathalie sent me the title of the talk and she mentioned VO, actually, I didn't know what it stands for, but it's a voice.
Okay. It's okay.
Nathalie, you are on. Tell us, impress us.
Thank you. I have a super packed presentation, and I will probably speak fast, and I will stumble on my words. So please bear with me. I don't have a second to spare, so just let's go. So I got a quick introduction, but I will do one myself. So my name is Nathalie. I am a senior UX designer on the Battlefield franchise, and I've been doing that since 2012. So I've been part of this for quite some time now. And as you can see here on my work from home environment, I have the plaques above the screens that lets you know what kind of games I've actually been part of developing. I have a master's in media technology and engineering. I am a former pro Counter-Strike player, so it might not be a surprise to you when I tell you that I'm primarily focusing on in-game UX design nowadays, because that is something I truly, truly enjoy. In this presentation, we're going to look at examples from Battlefield 1. I have a few more from Battlefield 5 and Battlefront, but I will mostly look at Battlefield 1. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it's a first-person shooter that is set during World War I. And this is probably one of the most interesting projects that I have been part of. It's probably my little diamond in my portfolio. So it's just, it's an amazing game. The style and tone of it, the entire atmosphere in the game, I still get the chills every single time I actually do play it and boot it up. So if you haven't tried it, I really suggest you doing that. So this is something that I'm sure that many of you have actually heard throughout your career, that we will just fix it in UI. I get the itches all over my body when I hear this, because we all know that this is not necessarily the case and that it's not necessarily always working. So what I like to do is look at UI as a complement to a design. It's not supposed to be an easy fix to a poor experience. That's not what it is. And if a game design requires UI to actually work, the design itself probably needs some work and it's not strong enough. At least that's what I think. So it's a personal opinion, but that's what I think. And when talking about UX, the misconception is that UX is UI. And I think we all know that that is not the case. That is not true, because UX is so much more. There's so much more to it. So looking at the player experience and what UX is from that point of view, I would say that we can look at a few different pillars, features, and different disciplines that we can utilize for this to happen. This is not all of it. I'm going to bring up 5 examples, but that is definitely not all of it. But we have in-world assets that we can utilize, interactable objects such as doors, destructible items, vehicles, etc. And let's say that we have 2 different kinds of doors. So we have one door that the player can run towards and actually interact with, open up and run into a house. But then we also have doors that are just for show. So let's say that we colorize these doors, one blue, the blue one for the ones that are actually interactable, and red for the ones that you can't run towards or run through. Same goes for destructible items. Anything that is made out of wood, for example, you would probably assume that you can destruct in one way or another. A wooden crate or something versus an iron crate. Iron is probably not destructible. So there's many ways to utilize other things except UI in this case by using just in-world assets. And then we have VFX, and I'm not talking about this cool VFX stuff that is going on in the world, like explosions, etc. I'm talking about VFX that is affecting the HUD. So let's say that the player is taking damage. We can add blood splatter on the actual HUD, and that is not UI per se, but it's something that helps emphasizing what is happening to the player at this right moment. And then we have the UI, of course. We're going to look at the HUD and in-world elements in just a moment, but that is one important part as well. We also have VO, messaging. We're using this for gameplay messaging, such as when a sector has been taken, for example, or when an object is being lost, etc. but you also have like social communication where a player might be in need of help, so they can call out, "I need a medic," as well as say thank you when they actually have been healed, etc. And then we have audio and audio triggers that we're using quite heavily, actually. So let's say that this player, again, is low on health. You will probably hear the soldier breathe heavily. We also have audio cues when it comes to different types of kills, so you can hear the difference between like a body kill versus a headshot. You can also hear the change in the gameplay pacing. So let's say that we're closing in on the end of a match. You will probably hear the music increase in intensity. Stuff like that is really important to bring all of this player experience together. So we're going to look at the HUD, because this is something that is important for the upcoming few slides. And this is the HUD from Battlefield 5. And as you can see here, these are all the fixed elements. These are all elements and messaging that has a fixed position in the HUD. And as you can see here, there's 23 of them. I think I counted 23 when I did this. And these can actually all be present at the same time, which means that we also have problem with localization and stuff like that. We have issues with extremely long player names. I think we allow for 17 characters player names, plus like the squad name, which is 6 characters. So we need to really think about how we play stuff like this. As you can see, I have this purple area in the middle. This is where we try to keep it clean from actual UI. It doesn't look like it here, but we try to do that. We try to keep it clean for in-game stuff. But also you can see here we have the kill confirmation and the score log, but that is deemed to be like second-to-second information that is important to the player. It's like a confirmation that they are doing something well. So we want that to be in the face of the player without actually being or taking too much space. But then we also have, as you can see, the critical messages and the awards are overlapping. But then we have to work with queuing and triggering information. And in this case, we can probably ask ourselves, is it really important that the player are presented with an award once they're in combat? Or can we wait until they are actually deemed to be out of combat? And the answer is probably yes. So we will just queue this information and try to show it at a different time. But then we're also offering the players to be able to turn off elements. So they have like a player option where they can turn off the chat, they can turn off like the kill log up in the right corner, etc. So we offer quite a lot of different options, and we have ways to not show everything at once. The sad part, though, is that even though there seems to be a lot of information, which it is, I totally get that, the sad part is that we are not showing any in-world icons in this screen. So everything that has to do with name tags, interactions, etc. is missing. So let's have a look at a picture when we combined all of this and where everything is present at the same time. And this is a lot of information. I am fully aware, but this is also my worst case. And I love this picture because it's so telling. I totally understand that this can happen like 1 in a million times, but still it can happen. So we need to have this in mind when we keep on adding UI and try to figure out if there's something else that we can use instead. And no, I'm probably not exaggerating. We're going to have a look at a gameplay clip where we are looking at the UI. But I also want you to, while you're looking at the UI that is popping up and we have messaging, we have hints, we have everything that is just telling the player what is currently happening, I want you to also listen to the audio and video that is tied to this. So when a message is showing up, try to listen for the audio cue that comes with it, because I will ask you a couple of questions later on. So let's go. Let's hope the audio works.
Munition für dich. Hier, Munition. Hier, Munition. Hier, frische Munition. We have taken objective Butter. Enemy presence. We have secured the center.
So as you can see, there is a lot of things going on here, right? And my worst case scenario might not be that as bad as you first thought, right? I took this screenshot from the video clip that you just saw. So when someone tells me that we can just fix it in UI, or when someone asks me to, or tells me that wouldn't it be cool if we could add like this blinking icon in the minimap area so they notice that whatever, I kind of go, oh, really? I'm pretty sure they will not notice this, okay? I'm not saying that because it's a personal opinion. It's just facts. I know that players won't notice. And speaking of notice, how many of you actually saw the hint that popped up? I'm pretty sure a few of you did because I asked you to be observant. So some people probably saw this. But then imagine being the one in-game playing and being in the middle of a fight, and the main focus is to make sure that you survive. You would probably not see this. You would probably definitely not read this. So it's very important to figure out when to show what information, because the player has to be in a certain mindset for this to actually make sense. Otherwise, it would just be noise on the screen. So when I say that I know this, it's not because it's a personal opinion. I know this because we UXR test this, and we are using eye tracking. And this is extremely valuable for someone like me, who's working with the in-game design and the in-game UI, because I can't test this as you would normally test like a menu flow, because I have no way of measuring clicks or looking at how many times a player entered the specific screens, because there are none. I don't have any KPI that I can lean back on for this. So what we do is just use eye tracking to know if the players actually notice the added UI element that we have. If players notice, for example, the change in the health bar going from normal to critical, so it goes from white to red. Does a player notice the hint that we just showed you? Probably not. And how much information do they actually miss out on? Because once they're in that mindset of trying to survive, that's the only thing they will focus on. And I will show you a short video clip from a UXR test that we did on Battlefront, where we're highlighting specifically this problem. And this player is being presented with an award, and the award is placed pretty much the same as in this picture. It's just above the crosshair, but the player is not even looking at it. They probably hear it because there's an audio cue, quite a distinct one. But what kind of award it is and what they're getting, they have no clue what it is. So let's have a look. So as you can see, when the player is actually playing, they're totally focusing on the horizontal line because that's where the enemies tend to be. They have no idea what's going on down in the minimap area, down in the left corner. So if we were to add some UI information over there, they would have no idea. The only reason they would probably see it is because they know exactly what to look for in the specific time this UI is actually available to them. So this is extremely important to me, like I said, when doing these kind of UXR tests. But then we also have players who really wants to turn off the HUD, and they just want to get rid of all the UI information that is available to them because they would like to go full immersion. And this was specifically true during Battlefield 1 because the game itself was so immersive, like the atmosphere and everything. They just wanted to feel like they were part of the war, so they turned everything off. And this goes back to what I said in the beginning, that a game design has to be able to stand on its own legs. It can't require UI, because if we offer the option for players to turn the HUD off, we also need to make sure that players can play this game without having the UI telling you how to do it. And this is where the video and audio becomes extremely important, because you will have to listen for when you are low on health, when you are low on ammo and need to reload. You need to listen to when you are killing someone, when the gameplay is changing, if a sector is being open, etc. And you looked at the gameplay with the UI. We're going to look at some gameplay without UI. I've added some text in the lower left corner for you to read what's currently happening and what you're listening for. But try to really, really listen to the different audio cues. Like you have something that is ticking, you have something that sounds like someone is patching you up, etc. So let's have a look and see what you can hear. apples. So as you can see, there's a lot of things going on, and you really need to know what to listen for to be able to understand this. But if you're a hardcore gamer and you know exactly what to listen for, you can totally play this game without any UI at all, because everything is there. It might be small, but everything is there. The last thing I want to show you before we actually start with the Q&A is the Battlefield 1 Prologue. And we wanted to create something that our players hadn't seen before. We wanted them to be able to feel something during this prologue because it was the first thing they saw when they booted up the game. This was like the introduction to the entire game that we released. And we found a narrative quite early that the entire studio really believed in. And we wanted our players to experience different roles on the battlefield. So we wanted them to be able to play multiple soldiers. And we wanted them to do this without having to go into a menu and change the soldier. So we decided that our progression mechanic was supposed to be death. We kind of had to kill our players off for them to progress in this prologue. And something that we also really, really wanted our players to be aware of was that during the Great War, soldiers really thought that this was their rite to passage. Like this was supposed to be their great adventure. But it was definitely not an adventure. As we all know, it was absolutely horrifying in every single way. And in war, as you see in this quote here, the only true equalizer is death. And that's what we wanted our players to experience, that when someone died, the living hell went on for someone else. And that was the entire narrative that we were going for. So we're going to look at another UXR test. And this player that is testing this has no idea what the mechanic or the progression mechanic is. So they're expecting to just be boots on ground, probably try to not die, to progress. I will show you this movie and then we can talk about it.
We're surrounded! We have to hold this line!
Minutes later.
So as you can see, this player didn't understand the progression mechanic that he has to die. So this player tried to stay alive for as long as he possibly could. And it took forever. This was one of the earlier UXRs we did, so we didn't have like a face save mechanic where we killed people off if they stayed alive for too long. So this player really tried his best to stay alive. He went the opposite direction. He hid in houses. Everything he could do to not be killed off. And while we thought we had something really amazing going on, because we really thought that this prologue was amazing, You can imagine our surprise when the UXR report came back and the prologue was received extremely negative by our players. The ratings came back with high confusion and frustration. Players thought the onboarding and the objectives were very unclear, and players just simply didn't understand what they were supposed to do. And death as a progression mechanic was extremely intuitive and unclear. So we really need to figure this one out somehow. And we were all kind of in agreement that we didn't want to change the overall narrative. We still wanted players to be different soldiers throughout this war and throughout this prologue. So we came up with this super, super simple fix. It was just a black screen. So in the beginning, we had a couple of black screens with text on it. We just added one more. It was 2 lines. And one of the lines were that the players were not expected to survive this. And we also added a small arbitrary to the soldier's name and with the soldier's name and age every time the player died. And for some reason, this just changed everything. Players constantly or instantly connected with this, and they constantly just looked forward to the next death, which is super sad, but in a way good for us because that was the entire mechanic, right? It was the entire progression mechanic. So we went from having a prologue where players really, really hated it to something that they truly, truly enjoyed. And it was just like the smallest fix. It was the smallest change that actually affected the entire player experience. And if there's something I want you to take with you from this presentation, it's exactly this. If you're noticing that your design is becoming too intricate or that it's becoming too complicated, try to take a step back, because maybe it's the smallest change that is exactly what you're looking for. It doesn't have to be big. You don't have to think outside the box. Maybe this is exactly what you need. So thank you very much for listening in. I think it's time for Q&A. Thank you.